The Tetrarch-class transport shuttle shook as if a giant hand were trying to squeeze the life out of it. Vibrations ran through the ribbed floor of the landing bay, up the soles of magnetic boots, and resonated as a dull ache in the teeth. Sergeant Marcus Val sat strapped in with the safety belts, watching the red warning light blink above the airlock. In rhythm with the blinking, he tapped a beat with his fingers on the body of his laser gun. 1, 2, 3. Inhale. 1, 2, 3. Exhale. "I feel like vomiting, Sergeant," whispered Private Jensen, sitting to his right. His face, normally ruddy and full of life, now looked the color of sour milk. "Swallow it, Jensen," Marcus replied without turning his head. "These are G-forces from atmospheric entry. Quartermasters say this world is famous for its storms. If you throw up your ration now, you'll be hungry until the drop, and I won't give you a second ration." A nervous chuckle went through the compartment. The soldiers of 3rd Platoon, 12th Hesperian Regiment, were tense. This was their first deployment in the Halo Star Zone, far from the light of Terra, far from the civilized worlds of Ultramar. Here, at the edge of the map, reality felt thinner. Marcus closed his eyes. He remembered Hesperian, the towering hive spires piercing the clouds, endless factories producing steel for the Great Crusade. He remembered the words of the iterator Lycan before embarkation. "We bring the light of reason. Where darkness of superstition and tyranny of Xenos reign, we bring order. You are not merely soldiers. You are instruments of enlightenment." Marcus believed it. Imperial truth was pure and logical. No gods, no demons, only humanity, which must take its rightful place among the stars, and Xenos, which hinder that process. Simple. Rational. The shuttle jolted violently, and the straps bit into shoulders. The grind of metal on metal drowned out the engine hum. "We're entering the lower layers," the pilot's Vox speaker cracked. "Brace for hard landing. Gravity 1.2 times Terran. Atmosphere toxic, sulfur content above normal. Respirators fully sealed." Marcus was the first to snap his helmet locks. The pneumatics hissed softly, and the world filled with the sound of his own breathing. The internal display blinked green, showing squad status. 30 green lights. 30 living souls under his charge. "Weapons ready," he commanded over the Vox channel. "We don't know what awaits in the drop zone. Recon reports sporadic resistance from local militias. But remember the briefing. There's something else here. Something that made the 4 Legion request auxilia support." Mentioning the 4th Legion made the soldiers tense. The Iron Warriors, Astartes, demigods of war clad in bare metal-colored ceramite. If Perturabo's Legion needed mortal help, then the situation was dire. Normally, the Iron Warriors handled things themselves, reducing enemy fortresses to rubble. The impact knocked the air from their lungs. The landing ramp began to howl downward, letting in clouds of yellowish, acrid smoke. "Forward! Forward! Movement is life!" Marcus shouted, unbuckling his harness. He was the first to dash down the ramp, laser gun at the ready, scanning the sector. The world of Zoas 4 greeted them with rain, but it was not water. It was an oily, thick sludge that left filmy streaks on visors and hissed on contact with armor plates. The sky was bruise-colored, violet-gray, low, oppressive. The landing zone was a vast plateau of cracked concrete. As far as the eye could see, ruins of industrial complexes towered. Giant pipes, like the ribs of dead leviathans, jutted from the ground. But that was not the strangest thing. The strangest thing was the silence. Here landed an entire regiment, thousands of soldiers, Lehman Russ tanks, Basilisk artillery tractors. The noise should have been immense, but sound here seemed muffled, like trapped in cotton. The sergeant's shout sounded dull. The roar of the shuttle's engines taking off behind them was a distant insect hum. "Radiation levels normal," reported Corporal Vesey, checking the auspex. "But, Sergeant, look at the chronometer readings." Marcus glanced at his wrist cogitator. The numbers, normally running in strict Imperial rhythm, flickered. Seconds would pause, then jump 3 at a time. "Electromagnetic interference," Marcus said, though a chill ran down his spine. "Rational explanation. Everything must have a rational explanation." "Ignore it. Navigate by visual cues. Squad, form wedge, move toward Rally Point Alpha. They advanced across the plateau. Mud squelched under boots. Marcus noticed something at the base of a ruined warehouse wall they passed. Stop, he raised a fist. He approached. It was the hull of a tank. Locally produced, primitive tracked design. But that was not the strange part. The tank metal was not blown or melted by laser. It crumbled. The armor turned to layered rust, flaking off with Marcus's step vibrations. The gun barrel detached and lay nearby, turned to reddish dust. How long has this war been here? One of the privates asked over the general channel. Looks like this thing's been here a century. Recon reports that forward elements of the Legion landed 3 days ago, Marcus replied, tracing a gloved finger over the tank's armor. The glove left a deep groove, as if the metal were clay. 3 days? Jensen repeated. Sergeant, steel doesn't rot like that in 3 days, even in acid rain. Marcus straightened. He felt the first tiny test of the truth, his armor, his logic. This is chemistry, he said firmly, addressing his men. The locals use some corrosive weapon, gas or acid. That's why we're in sealed suits. Keep helmets on, even if filters clog. Understood? Yes, Sergeant. They continued the march. But Marcus now scanned his surroundings more carefully. He noticed details that the brain initially refused to process. Concrete underfoot was covered in cracks from which strange gray moss sprouted. This moss grew, died, and turned to dust in minutes. A life-and-death cycle, accelerated hundreds of times. Ahead, through the rain haze, lights appeared. Spotlights, sharp white beams cutting through the gloom. Rally Point Alpha, Iron Warriors outpost. Approaching Allied positions, Marcus shouted. Weapons on safety. Do not aim at Astartes if you don't want to lose your hands. The Iron Warriors' fortifications were a pinnacle of engineering. In 3 days, they built a perfect system of trenches, bunkers, and firing points. Everything measured to the millimeter. Geometry of war. But when Marcus reached the first parapets, he saw something that made him halt. A massive warrior in 4 Legion gray armor stood at post, his bolter lowered. Marcus had never seen Astartes so close. They were propaganda heroes, angels of the Emperor. This angel looked like it had just come out of a meat grinder. His armor, usually polished, was dull and blotched with oxidation. Yellow and black chevrons on the shoulder were faded, paint flaking. But the most terrifying thing was how he moved. Slow, heavy, as if the servos of his power armor were struggling against invisible resistance. The legionary turned his helmet toward Marcus. The visor lenses glowed dim red. Identification, the Space Marine's voice crackled through external speakers as if the voice module were damaged. Sergeant Marcus Val, 12th Hesperian, Marcus reported, standing rigid. Here to reinforce the perimeter. The Astartes was silent for several long seconds. Reinforcements, he repeated. No gratitude in the word, only cold, bitter irony. Meat for the meat grinder of time. Pardon, my lord? Proceed, mortal, the giant gestured, inviting them into the perimeter. And pray to your logic, because here, it dies first. Marcus signaled his squad to move. Passing the Space Marine, he noticed a detail that made his throat dry. On the ceramite shoulder, where the paint had peeled, were deep scratches. Not from claws, not from bullets. These were erosion marks. As if wind had blown on this armor for 1,000 years. But they landed only 3 days ago. Marcus gripped his lasgun tighter. SOS 4 was wrong. It smelled not just of war, but of something ancient and hungry. Jensen Vesey, he whispered in the squad's closed channel. Stay close to me. We're here for a while. Inside the perimeter, the air was different. Outside, it smelled of rot and rain. Here, ozone, gun oil, and recycled promethium filled the air. The Iron Warriors' camp was not a place of rest, but a perfectly tuned machine. No tents or fires, only modular gray plasteel bunkers, rows of basilisk artillery covered with camouflage nets, and servitors monotonously moving crates of ammunition. Marcus felt out of place. His men, soldiers of the Imperial Army, huddled together. They were used to war, but war alongside Astartes was different. The Space Marines of the 4 Legion passed them without a glance. To these giants, mortals were nothing more than a resource, like bolter shells or fuel rods, useful while functioning, replaceable when broken. "Sergeant Val," a voice came from a hovering servo skull. The skull, equipped with an anti-grav engine and optical lenses instead of eyes, flew to Marcus's face. "You and the officers of the incoming forces must immediately report to Strategium Prim. The rest, occupy Sector Omicron 9. "Understood," Marcus nodded. He turned to his squad. "Vesey, take command. Deploy the men, check rations, and for Terra's sake, make them clean their weapons. If I return and see a speck of rust, you'll be scrubbing latrines until the end of the campaign." "Yes, Sergeant, but—" Corporal Vesey lowered his voice. "Marcus, did you see their armor? The Iron Warriors? If even ceramite rots, what will happen to our vests?" Marcus remained silent. He had no answer, and a lie would have been an insult. He just patted the corporal on the shoulder and headed to the central bunker. The Strategium was a vast hall with a low ceiling, lit by the sharp blue glow of hololithic tables. In the center stood a group of Imperial Army officers, colonels, majors, all tired and frightened. But they remained silent. Power in this room belonged to another. At the tactical table stood him, the Warforge, Barban Falk. Marcus would learn his name later. A giant in cataphracti Terminator armor. His armor was massive, humped, making him look like a walking tank. His helmet was removed, revealing a granite-like face, hard, emotionless, grayish skin. Ports for network connections were implanted into his skull. "The situation worsens," said the Warforge. His voice sounded like the grinding of tectonic plates. He didn't shout, but the echo filled the hall. "The entropic decay zone is expanding. We lost the 3rd line of defense 2 hours ago." The hologram above the table flickered, showing a map. Red zones pulsed, consuming the green defensive lines. The colonel of the 12th Hesperian, a tall man with a monocle, stepped forward, his voice trembling. "Lord Astartes, we have just arrived. My men are ready to fight, but we need intel. What are we dealing with? My soldiers speak of ghosts, of rust that devours metal in seconds. Psyker activity? Sorcery?" The Warforge slowly turned his head. No contempt in his eyes, only cold calculation. "Sorcery is a word for the ignorant, Colonel. We are fighting a xenoform known as Hrudi. It is a migratory species of parasite." He pressed a button on the panel. An image appeared above the table. The creature looked horrifying. Hunched, segmented, insectoid yet like a decayed corpse wrapped in rags. The most disturbing part was the data running next to the image. "They generate a passive temporal distortion field," the Astartes continued. "Space around them ages, matter deteriorates, biological tissue withers. The more gather in one place, the stronger the effect. Currently, a mass migration is underway on Zoas 4, millions of individuals." Silence fell over the hall. Marcus felt cold to the bone. He remembered Jensen coughing in the shuttle. "So, we're fighting time?" Marcus whispered, not intending to speak. The words escaped him. The Warforge's gaze fell on the sergeant. "You are fighting the enemy of the Imperium, soldier. Time is merely a variable in the equation. Your task is to hold Sector 9. Hrudi fear bright light and fire. We will supply you with promethium, plenty of promethium. Your job is to burn them before they reach the range of their fields." "And if they reach it?" the colonel asked. The Iron Warrior smirked, a terrifying grin exposing metallic teeth. "Then you will age to death in seconds. But you will bias those seconds. That is your function." Marcus left the bunker an hour later. Night fell quickly on Zoas 4. Darkness was absolute, thick, as if the world were covered in a black shroud. Only the perimeter spotlights cut the gloom, creating islands of safety. He walked to his squad, digesting what he had heard. Function. To the Astartes, they were a function. Logical. Rational. Imperial truth teaches that sacrifice for the species is justified. Yet why did an icy horror squeeze inside him? "Sergeant!" his men called. By the fire, they had been allowed to start one in barrels using pieces of broken crates. His men sat. Vesey, Jensen, and the big man, Thorn. They looked small against the colossal walls built by the Legion. Marcus approached the fire and extended his hands toward the warmth. "What did they say, boss?" Thorne asked, cleaning his laser gun. Marcus looked into the flames. "They said we have a lot of work. The enemy fears light, so we'll make the fires bigger." He didn't tell them about function, didn't tell them their armor was useless. Lies for the greater good were also part of a commander's duty. "When will the rest arrive?" Jensen asked. "What rest?" "Well," the young man hesitated. "Rumors. Among the shuttle crew. They said the flagship of his fleet entered the system, that the Emperor himself may be here." Whispers passed among the soldiers. Hope. Foolish, irrational hope. Marcus laughed harshly. "Don't be idiots. The Emperor is on Terra or at the Crusade Spear, hundreds of light years away. He won't come to save our asses from a bunch of moldy bugs. We're alone. Us and the Iron Warriors." At that moment, the siren wailed. The sound was unlike a standard alarm, a low, guttural hum that made teeth vibrate. The perimeter spotlights snapped toward the wastelands. "Contact!" roared the Vox. "Mass contact in Sector Omicron! All units to engage!" Marcus grabbed his helmet. "Stand! Move! Weapons ready!" The ground trembled. Somewhere in the dark, beyond the wall of light, the bolters of the Iron Warriors thundered. The sound was dense, like a giant hammer. Through the barrage, another sound emerged. A strange whistling noise, like falling sand. "They're coming," whispered Vesey, looking at the auspex. "Emperor, have mercy." On the radar's green screen, it wasn't a point, nor two. The whole screen was red. A wave, a tsunami of flesh and time rolling over their tiny island of iron. Marcus racked the laser gun. "Forget prayers," he shouted, though his hands shook. "Trust your aim and the man beside you. Fire at will." The first shadow leapt over the parapet. It was fast, too fast for a creature that looked like a frail old man in rags. The creature landed on the roof of a bunker 10 meters from them. In the spotlights, Marcus saw it clearly. Gray, sagging skin, black, hollow eyes, and an aura. The air around the creature shimmered. The paint on the bunker roof where it stepped instantly bubbled and flaked to dust. The creature opened its mouth, releasing not a scream, but a beam of strange, dirty energy. The beam struck Private Smith. There was no blood, no explosion. Smith simply collapsed. His body sagged as if it had dried from within. Within a second, a shriveled skeletal hand rolled from his sleeve, wrapped in parchment-thin skin. He had aged to death in an instant. "Fire!" Marcus shouted, squeezing the trigger. Laser beams tore through the darkness. The creature shrieked and ignited. But behind it, hundreds more were climbing over the wall. The war had begun, and in this war, they had no chance. Dawn on Exos 4 brought no relief, only light to reveal the scale of the catastrophe. The sun of the system, a dim orange dwarf, barely pierced the layers of toxic clouds, painting the battlefield in bruised hues, purple, brown, sickly yellow. The rain had stopped, replaced by a fine, dry particulate in the air. Marcus sat on an ammunition crate, staring blankly ahead. He removed his helmet. The air was cold, smelling of dust, the scent of a tomb untouched for millennia. He ran his hand through his hair. A few gray strands clung to his glove. Marcus blinked. He was 30 standard Terran years old. He shouldn't have gray hair. He rubbed his face. Stubble was coarse, skin dry and flaky. "Sergeant?" Jensen's voice was quiet, fragile. Marcus raised his head. The private stood before him, holding a cup of recaf. His hands shook so badly the hot liquid sloshed onto his dirty boots. "Casualties, Jensen?" Marcus asked. His voice rasped, as if he had been shouting for a week. 7 KIA, Sergeant. 3 MIA, just pulled into the shadows. Another 5 in the medbay, but the medics say..." Jensen swallowed. "They say they don't know how to treat accelerated aging. Private Caller's kidneys and liver failed, like a 90-year-old man, and he's only 19. Marcus took the cup, but did not drink. The liquid smelled musty. "Weapons?" "A third of the laser guns are inoperative. Lenses clouded, batteries died on their own." We're trying to assemble working rifles from parts, but the plastic crumbles in our hands. Marcus nodded and stood. His knees cracked. Gather the men. Those who can stand, perimeter. Those who can't, load magazines. We're alive, Jensen. That's what matters. He walked along the trench. What he had seen at night seemed like a nightmare. In daylight, it was worse. Concrete fortifications, poured only 3 days ago, looked like ancient ruins. Rebar jutted from crumbled stone like rusted ribs. Sandbags had decayed, sand spilling in shapeless heaps. The most horrifying sight was the Iron Warriors. In the repair sector, outdoors, a Predator tank stood. Technicians and servitors scurried around it. Marcus stopped to watch. The tank, this indestructible killing machine, was dying. Its armor pocked with deep corrosion, like leprous sores. Tracks had fused into a single mass of rust. One of the Astartes, a tech marine with a massive servo arm on his back, yelled in binary mechanicus, trying to unscrew an access hatch. The bolt wouldn't budge. The Astartes roared in frustration and slammed his fist on the armor. Ceramite, meant to withstand rocket hits, cracked. A piece of armor fell off, raising a cloud of red dust. The tech marine froze. In his stance was something unusual for an Astartes. Confusion. The logic of war, the logic of matter, did not apply here. Iron should not tire, but it did. Marcus moved on toward the field hospital. He needed to see his men. Inside the inflatable module, whose fabric had begun thinning and letting in light, the stench threatened to turn his stomach. The smell of old sweat and medicines. On the cots lay soldiers. Marcus approached Private Kaller. Jensen was right. On the cot lay an elderly man. Skin sagged in folds, eyes clouded with cataracts. He breathed with a rasping whistle. "Mom," the old man whispered with parched lips. "It's dark. Mom." Marcus clenched his fists until his nails dug into his palms. Imperial truth. We bring enlightenment. What, for warp's sake, enlightenment could be brought here? How to explain to this young man why his youth had been stolen in one night using science? Science spoke of temporal fields, but it helped nothing. It sounded like mockery. Here in this tent, science was dead. Faith or a miracle was needed. A man entered in a white coat, over which flak armor was thrown. The regiment's chief medic, Dr. Arn. He looked exhausted. "Sergeant Val," he nodded. "Here to say goodbye?" Will he survive? No, multi-organ failure. The heart simply cannot pump blood. His biological clock spun 70 years in 6 hours of combat. I can give pain relief, but the morphine supplies have turned to vinegar. Ampules decompressed. Arn removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "We fight entropy, Sergeant, and entropy always wins." "Do you know what's worst?" "What?" "Rations. I checked the supply depot an hour ago. Cans have bloated, biscuits turned to dust, water in the cisterns has gone bad. We have food for 2 days, Marcus. Even if the Hrudi don't kill us, we'll die of starvation or dysentery." Marcus looked at the dying man. "The Iron Warriors know?" "The Warforged knows everything, but for the Astartes it's no problem. Their physiology allows them to eat bark and stone, and their armor recycles waste into nutritional paste. They can fight here for months. We cannot. We're a burden to them." Outside, the siren wailed again. A short, sharp signal. "Commenders assembly." Marcus left the tent. This time the gathering was not in a bunker, but on the parade ground. Rows of Iron Warriors stood, 300 less than had landed. Their armor no longer gleamed, ash and rust-colored, yet they stood like statues. Before the formation walked the Warforge, Falk. "Mortals!" His voice, amplified through Voxgrill, cut through the wind. "Last night the enemy probed our defenses. It found weak points. It understood that we are here, and it is coming to finish what it started. Falk pointed his massive power hammer toward the horizon. Long-range scanners have detected movement of the migratory swarm. This is not reconnaissance. This is the main mass. Billions of entities. They will reach this sector in 40 hours. A murmur ran through the Imperial Army soldiers. Evacuation? Shouted an officer. We must retreat to orbit. The Warforged turned to him. There will be no evacuation. Atmospheric storms caused by Xeno's presence make shuttle takeoff impossible. The orbiting fleet cannot break through the interference. We are trapped. He paused, letting the words sink in. We have one option. Attack. Silence on the parade ground became deafening. At the center of the migration is what our cogitators have identified as the Nexus. Queen, communication hub, field generator. It does not matter. If we destroy it, the storm will abate and the entropic field will collapse. Falk scanned the rows of men. The IV Legion will go at the vanguard. We will break the path. You, he pointed at the 12th Regiment soldiers, follow. You will cover our flanks. You will carry flamers. You will die so we can advance. Marcus felt cold fury. You will die. Just like that. This is suicide, whispered Wessie beside him. They'll just feed us to them, to slow time for the Astartes. It's our duty, Marcus said loudly, though the words tasted bitter on his tongue. Prepare yourselves, the Warforged concluded. We march in 1 hour. Leave the wounded. Leave extra supplies. Take only weapons and faith in... Falk hesitated. He had wanted to say imperial truth, but even that sounded absurd. Faith in iron. The formation began to dissolve. Soldiers trudged toward their positions like condemned men. Marcus returned to his squad. Jensen cleaned his rifle, though the barrel was hopelessly corroded. We're going on the attack, men, Marcus said. We're cutting the heart out of this storm. Sergeant, Jensen looked up. Tears stood in his eyes. What's the point? We'll die anyway. If not by bullets, then by age. Look at my hands. He extended his hands. The skin was covered in senile mottling, joints swollen. I'm 22, Sergeant, and I feel like I've lived a lifetime. And that life was shit. Why are we doing this? For Terra we'll never see? For the Emperor who doesn't care? Marcus squatted before him. For the first time, he didn't know the proper response. We do this, Jensen, because the alternative is to lie down and rot. I don't want to rot. I want to take as many of those bastards with me as I can. He placed a hand on the private's shoulder. If you die today, you die a soldier, with a weapon in your hands. Not an old man in a puddle of his own piss. That's all we have left. Pride. Jensen nodded. A faint spark appeared in his eyes. Not hope, but the resolve of the doomed. For pride, he whispered. Marcus stood and looked at the sky. Clouds twisted into a spiral above the horizon where they were headed. He pulled a small medallion from his pocket, an aquila, the two-headed eagle, a standard Terran souvenir. The metal had dulled, but the eagle was still visible. If you hear me, Marcus whispered into the void, addressing the one he was forbidden to call a god. If you are truly as great as they say, don't save me. Save at least my soul, because my body already belongs to this cursed world. He hung the medallion around his neck and hid it beneath his armor. Squad, he commanded. Form up. We're going hunting. In the distance, engines of Land Raider tanks roared through the fog. The Iron Warriors began their march of death, and the small men, made of soft flesh and fragile bones, followed them into the maw of eternity. The march began in silence, a silence like at a funeral. Thousands of boots churned the mud into gray, radioactive slurry. The rumble of the tank treads was muted, as if the sound waves died before they were born. Marcus marched in the middle of his squad's column. Every step was a struggle. Not simple fatigue, but the sensation that gravity increased with each meter closer to the migration's epicenter. The air thickened, oily. The helmet filters clogged an hour ago. Now each breath carried the taste of sulfur and rotting leaves. Ahead walked the Iron Warriors. Their formation was an indestructible wedge piercing reality, but Marcus could see how hard it was for them. Servo motors of their power armor wailed under the strain. Black oil seeped from the armor's joints like venous blood. Ceramite, once polished steel-colored, was now matte, rough, covered in microcracks. "Sergeant," a voice whispered in the Vox. It was Private Thorne. "Look to the right, at the ruins." Marcus turned his head. To the right of the road rose the remnants of a residential block, a concrete skeleton of a building. But when Marcus blinked, the building changed. For a split second, the ruins disappeared. In their place, he saw a glittering spire of glass and white stone. He saw people on balconies, laughing, drinking wine, dressed in silks. He saw children playing with an anti-gravity drone. The world before the war. The world before the Croods. Blink. The vision vanished. Gray concrete returned, rain returned, death returned. But now on the balconies, where people had laughed a moment ago, hung desiccated mummies, wrapped in shreds of cobwebs. "Temporal anomalies," Marcus's voice was dry. "Don't look sideways. Watch the back of the one ahead. It's all hallucinations." But he knew that was a lie. The Crud's entropic field was so strong that the fabric of time thinned. Past, present, and future mixed into a nauseating cocktail. They walked another kilometer. Suddenly, the lead Lehman Russ of the support company, 50 meters ahead of Marcus, stopped abruptly. The tank was called Hammer of Terra. On its side was the proud banner of the regiment. "What's the holdup?" shouted one of the officers. No answer came. Instead, Marcus heard a screech, a horrific sound, like metal being crushed in a press. The tank's armor began to peel. Thick plates flaked off in layers like bark from a rotten tree. The gun barrel sagged as if made of wax, then crashed off with a roar, shattering into reddish dust as it hit the ground. The treads snapped. "Crew, get out!" Marcus yelled, instinctively rushing forward. The turret hatch flew open. A hand appeared, but the hand didn't grasp the edge. It crumbled. Bone turned to dust in the air. The commander didn't even have time to scream. His Vox transmitter only carried the dry crackle of crumbling bones and the wet sound of settling flesh. The tank died in 10 seconds. From the 30-ton war machine remained only a pile of rusty slag and a dark patch of organic matter inside. The column froze. People recoiled. Panic, cold and sticky, began to flood the ranks. "They killed a tank, just with a look," someone whimpered. "Move!" The thunderous voice of the forge master cut through the panic. Astartes strode past Marcus, pushing him aside as if he were a rag doll. The Iron Warriors stepped over the heap of rust that had once been a tank, crushing its remains into the mud. "Metal is weak," the giant growled. "Flesh is weak. Only will is eternal. Forward, dogs, or I will shoot you for cowardice myself, and it will be faster than what the Xenos will do to you." Marcus rose from the mud. "Platoon, stand up!" His voice cracked on a cough. "You heard him! March!" He approached Jensen. The boy walked, stumbling, leaning on his rifle like a cane. Marcus looked at his face and recoiled. Jensen was no longer 22. He was over 80. His face was a skull stretched with parchment. His eyes sunk so deep they were almost invisible. Sparse gray hair whipped in the wind. "Jensen?" Marcus called softly. The old man turned his head. Recognition was gone from his cloudy eyes. "Grandson?" he slurred toothlessly. "Are we home already? Mother promised a berry pie." "We're going home, Jensen." Marcus felt a tear run down his cheek. "Just hold on to me. Pie will come soon." He took the old man by the arm and dragged him forward. They walked through hell. Around them, time went mad. Marcus saw soldiers fall and turn into skeletons before touching the ground. He saw rifles rust in hands, exploding in the face of their owners due to unstable ammunition. But they moved, because behind them was only death, and ahead, a ghostly chance for vengeance. Finally, the fog lifted. They reached the edge of a massive crater. Below, a kilometer away, churned a sea. but it was not water. The entire crater, 10 kilometers wide, was filled with bodies. Millions, billions of cruds. They writhed, crawling over each other, forming a living mountain of rags and gray flesh. At the center pulsed a black obelisk, the Nexus. It warped the light around it, creating a funnel that pulled even the clouds in. The sight was so disgusting and majestic in its horror that Marcus froze. The entropic field here was so dense that Marcus felt himself aging with every heartbeat. His skin itched, his joints burned. He felt calcium drain from his bones. The Iron Warriors began to form battle lines. Their land raiders and predators, those that could still move, aimed their weapons at the living sea below. The Forge Master raised his hammer. Sparks of energy flew from the head, but they were dim, dying. "Iron within!" he roared. "Iron without!" answered hundreds of Astartes' voices. "Fire!" And hell opened. Rockets, bolter shells, laser beams, all fell into the crater. The Cruds did not respond with fire. They responded with time. A wave of distortion rose from the crater against the projectiles. Marcus saw rockets fired by vortex launchers age mid-air. Their fuel ran out, casings rusted, warheads disintegrated. The projectiles turned to dust before reaching their target. "They're invulnerable," whispered Wessie, standing next to Marcus. The corporal looked like a 50-year-old man, worn by life. "Our weapons die before they kill them." "Flamethrowers!" Marcus shouted. "Only fire. Fire cannot age." It was their only hope. Plasma and promethium, pure energy. The Iron Warriors understood this too. Units with heavy flamers moved down the crater slope. 12th Regiment, cover the Astartes, bayonets fixed," commanded the colonel, his voice now sounding like the scraping of a tombstone. Marcus drew his corroded knife. The laser gun was useless. The lens had cracked an hour ago. "For Jensen," he rasped. Next to him, old Jensen fell to his knees. He could go no further. His heart stopped. He died not from a bullet, but from time stolen by the monsters. Marcus did not stop. He stepped over his comrade's body. In his head was only emptiness and rage. They ran down into the millions of shadows. The crater slope was slick with Xenos slime. Shadows reached for them. The first clash was short and brutal. Cruds were physically weak, their bodies easily broken by Astartes' strikes. But their touch was death. An Iron Warrior 3 meters from Marcus engaged a large specimen. The Xenos coiled around his leg. Ceramite grayed. The Astartes roared as his leg inside the armor turned to desiccated mummy. He fell but crushed the creature's skull with his fist. "Burn them!" Streams of promethium struck the Xenos horde. Cruds ignited like dry paper. Their screams tore eardrums, but there were too many. They surged in waves. Human weapons failed. Soldiers fell, dying from age. Marcus slashed with his knife, kicked, bit. He felt his own strength leave him. His hair turned white. Skin on his hands became thin as paper. Breath ripped his chest. He was an old man in a soldier's body. The end, he thought, as his knife broke on the spine of another creature. We didn't even reach the Nexus. Around him, the 12th Regiment died. From 1,000 men, barely 100 remained. The Iron Warriors formed a defensive ring, but their armor no longer held. Entropy devoured even them. Above them, in the sky, in clouds that seemed eternal, something changed. The storm did not merely rage, it stopped, as if someone had pressed pause. Then the heavens split, but not with thunder, with gold. The light was not just bright. Brightness is a measurable physical property. What struck the Zoas 4 crater could not be measured. It was truth, expressed in photons. Marcus, who a second ago was a frail old man ready to die, screamed. He covered his face with his hands, but the light passed through flesh. He saw the bones of his own fingers, dark silhouettes in a golden haze. He saw blood pulse in his veins. The roar of battle vanished. The Crud's screams, the screech of dying tanks, the moans of the wounded, all erased. Only the hum remained, a low, vibrating sound born not in the ears but at the very center of the brain. It was the sound of a planet-sized reactor at work, the sound of absolute, indisputable power. In the center of the crater, where darkness had reigned a second ago, A teleportation beam struck. The air around it ignited. Ozone turned to plasma. A pressure wave from the landing point threw nearby Cruds hundreds of meters. Those hit directly were simply annihilated, not burned. Their existence was undone. Marcus, lying in the mud, saw through tear-filled eyes figures emerge from the light beam. First, the Custodian Guard. They were taller than Astartes. Their auramite armor shone with inner light. Their plumes were red as fresh blood. The guard spears hummed, slicing reality itself. They moved with grace beyond even the Space Marines. They were not soldiers. They were lions released upon rats. The custodians formed a perfect circle. Their built-in bolters opened fire. Each shot, death, not a single miss. A perfect symphony of annihilation. But Marcus barely looked at them, because then he appeared. At that moment, time on SOS 4 did not just stop, it knelt. The Emperor of Mankind did not wear a helmet. His face was exposed to the winds and venom of this world, yet no speck dared touch his skin. Around his head glowed a halo, a psychic crown woven from pure will. He was immense, taller than Primarchs, beyond any mortal comprehension. His golden armor was adorned with depictions of all humanity's victories, from the first wars on Terra to the conquest of the stars. As he stepped onto the desecrated ground of the crater, the black mud beneath his boot turned to white marble. His presence rewrote the laws of nature. Vanish. The word was not spoken by lips. It struck like a mental hammer across the crater. Marcus felt his soul shrink, trying to hide in his heels. This was fear, but not the animal terror he had felt before the Cruds. This was sacred awe, the fear of clay before the potter. The Cruds, beings that fed on entropy, screamed. To them, the Emperor was anathema. He was order. He was the eternal now, destroying their manipulations of time. Wherever the Emperor looked, shadows boiled. Marcus saw the massive, many-legged creatures of the Nexus begin to burn from within with golden fire. They tried to use their fields, to age him, to turn him to dust. But how can you age eternity? The Emperor raised his sword. The blade flared with fire brighter than the local sun. He stepped forward, into the heart of the enemy horde. He did not run. He simply moved through moments of time. A swing of the sword. 100 Xenos dissolved into atoms. The cut was so pure that reality did not immediately close, leaving for a second a black rift into nothingness. Then a miracle, or a curse. A wave of golden energy from the Emperor washed over the 12th Regiment's positions. Marcus closed his eyes, expecting to burn. He felt pain. Wild, unbearable pain across his body, in his bones, muscles, skin. He screamed, clawing the ground. He felt turned inside out, his joints cracked, bending. "Stop!" he gasped. "Kill me, just stop!" But the pain vanished. Marcus opened his eyes. He was breathing, deeply, fully, no wheezing. He looked at his hands. The old, wrinkled flesh was gone, tight, tanned, firm. Veins receded, scars from the trenches healed. He tore off his glove. His fingers were straight and strong. He grabbed his head. Hair. Thick, stiff hair. Marcus jumped up. His knees did not ache. His back straightened. He was young again. No, not just young. He felt stronger than ever. He looked around. Around him, soldiers of the 12th Regiment rose from the mud. Those who a minute ago were dying old men now stood, touching their faces in astonishment. The Emperor had not just slain the enemy. His aura undid what the Cruds had done. He returned stolen time. "This is impossible," whispered Dr. Arn nearby. He held broken glasses, now unnecessary. His vision was perfect. "Entropy is irreversible. It's a law of physics." "To hell with physics," shouted Corporal Wessey, laughing with manic hysteria. Look at him!" Below, in the crater, the battle was over. It was not a battle. It was an extermination. The black obelisk of the Nexus collapsed, cleaved in two by a single stroke of the flaming sword. The remaining Cruds fled, dissolving into rifts of reality, away from the golden light. The Emperor stood among a field of corpses, his sword extinguished. Custodians froze around him like statues. Even the Iron Warriors, proud sons of Perturabo, dropped to one knee. Their Primarch was not here, but before the Master of Mankind, all bowed. The Emperor turned. He looked up at the crater slope, where surviving humans stood. Marcus felt that gaze. This time he did not fall. He froze. It seemed the Emperor looked only at him. Of thousands of soldiers, he chose Sergeant Val. The Emperor's eyes were not human eyes. They were wells of liquid gold, galaxies spinning within. There was no warmth in that gaze, no fatherly love sung of by poets. There was weight, an unimaginable, crushing responsibility. "I gave you life." Again, a voice spoke in Marcus's mind. Not sound, but a memory always present. "Do not waste it." "My lord." Marcus's lips moved, but no sound came. Tears ran down his new, young face. But now they were tears not of relief, but of fanaticism. At that moment, standing on the edge of the crater, Marcus Val understood one thing. The imperial truth was a lie. "There are no gods," the iterators said. But Marcus saw the laws of the universe bend to the will of one being. If one who can reverse time and kill death with a glance is not God, then the word God has no meaning at all. The Emperor turned away. A teleportation flash again lit the crater, blinding everyone for a moment. When vision returned, the crater was empty. No golden guardians, no master. Only smoking Xenos corpses and surviving humans standing in the rain. The clouds above began to disperse. For the first time in the campaign, a beam of real, pure starlight pierced the toxic haze. Marcus fell to his knees in the mud. He felt the aquila on his chest. The medallion warmed, burning the skin, but Marcus did not remove his hands. "Sergeant?" Wessie approached. The corporal looked 20 years younger, his face radiating health, but in his eyes danced the horror of what had been revealed. "What do we do? What will we write in reports? No one will believe us. Science cannot explain this." Marcus raised his head. A new, terrible fire burned in his eyes. "We will not write reports, Wessie. We will write scripture." "Sergeant, this is heresy. Commissars. Commissars did not see what we saw," Marcus shouted. He stood, fists clenched. Strength overflowed him. "We were dead, and now we live. He resurrected us. We are his witnesses." He looked at his people. They all stared at him. And in their eyes he saw the same thing. A seed he had sown, even unwillingly. A seed of faith. "Gather your weapons," Marcus said quietly. "We leave this planet. But we are no longer the 12th Imperial Army Regiment." "Then who are we?" Marcus looked at where the Emperor had stood. "We are his martyrs, denied death, and we will spread this word across the stars." The survivors of the 12th Regiment trudged through the poisoned plains of Zoas 4. The storm had passed, leaving a strange silence. Even the wind seemed afraid to disturb the ground, still smoking from the Emperor's strike. Marcus led the group toward the coordinates of the Collector, a massive underground complex rumored to hold both Xenos artifacts and the remnants of human colonies lost during the crude occupation. The terrain was jagged, littered with scorched metal and strange crystalline growths that hummed faintly with residual entropy. "Sergeant, what if there's more of them?" Wessie whispered. Even his voice trembled, though he now looked fully restored to youth. "Then we burn them, again." Marcus's tone was calm, almost cold. "The Emperor showed us the way. The rest is just cleanup." The entrance to the Collector appeared like a wound in the earth. The hatch was massive, armored, but the rust of centuries barely slowed their progress. With a few blasts of promethium, Marcus and his men forced it open. Inside, the air was thick. Faint phosphorescent lights ran along the walls, powered by unknown technology. Shadows danced, and somewhere deep in the complex, chanting echoed. "Someone's here," said Corporal Wessie, holding his laser gun ready. "Not Xenos, humans." They moved cautiously down the corridors. The chanting grew louder, resonating in their bones. It was rhythmic, almost hypnotic, yet beneath it lay a palpable fear. At the heart of the Collector they found a large chamber. Torches burned with blue flames. Around a circular dais stood figures draped in black robes, symbols of the crude entropic field stitched in gold thread. And in the center, Grenadel. The former warlord of the Xenos human hybrid cult had survived the Emperor's arrival, but he was not the same. Entropy had twisted him. His body was gaunt, bones protruding, but his eyes burned with unnatural light. "So, the Emperor's pets have come," he hissed, voice a rasp. "How quaint." "Grenadel, it's over," Marcus stepped forward. "Your cult is finished." "Over?" The warlord laughed. His mouth was thin and stretched unnaturally. "Do you think your precious Emperor has ended it? You saw him, yes. You even lived. But this world, this collector, it is my domain. Time bends here, entropy bends here, and I am eternal." He raised his hand and the chamber trembled. Shadows writhed along the walls, and the chanting of his cultists rose in a crescendo. Marcus gripped his knife. Around him, his men readied their weapons. Prometheum tanks hissed. "We don't bargain with devils, we end them." Grenadel's smile widened. Then the air itself seemed to distort. The walls stretched and contracted, floors buckled. Time itself warred with their senses. Soldiers aged decades in seconds, yet remained conscious. Some shriveled to skeletons, others reverted to children, then collapsed from confusion. "Burn them!" Marcus shouted, raising a flamethrower. The golden aura of the Emperor, though distant, seemed to pulse in Marcus's memory. He remembered the light, the fire, the command. Do not waste it. And they obeyed. Prometheum ignited. Blue flames cascaded over the cultists. Grenadel screeched, throwing psychic waves to repel the fire, but it was too late. The flames clung to his robes, searing flesh, melting reality where they passed. The cultists fell screaming, and the chamber echoed with the sound of molten stone and boiling air. Grenadel tried to flee, but Marcus intercepted him. They clashed, knife against twisted bone. The warlord was fast, unnaturally strong, but Marcus's rage and the Emperor's blessing guided every strike. He drove the knife into Grenadel's chest. Not merely flesh, but something deeper, the source of his unnatural longevity. Grenadel's scream was a blend of agony and disbelief. His body disintegrated in a cloud of gray dust, leaving only a faint echo of his existence. The collector shook. The walls cracked, but the chamber was silent now. Marcus stood among the ruins, chest heaving. Around him, his men were alive, whole. Time had been restored, and the entropic distortions of Grenadel's cult were gone. "Is it over?" Wessie asked, voice trembling. Marcus lowered his knife. He looked at the ruins, at the burned symbols, at the empty dais. "For now," he said. "But never forget, the Emperor gave us this second chance. Never waste it." Silence fell. Then, one by one, the survivors began moving toward the exit. Outside, the stars of Zoas 4 shone clearly for the first time in decades. The wind carried no poison, only the faint scent of rain and scorched earth. Marcus looked up at the sky. He felt the weight of eternity pressing on his shoulders. He thought of Jensen, of the dead, of the Emperor's gaze, and he knew this: the galaxy would never be the same. But for now, they lived, and that was enough. The survivors emerged from the shattered halls of the Collector, stepping into the open plains of Zoas 4. The storm clouds had cleared, revealing a sky lit with countless stars, glittering like fragments of forgotten worlds. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of rain and scorched earth. "We made it," Wessie whispered, still in awe. His voice trembled between relief and disbelief. Marcus did not answer immediately. He surveyed the horizon, feeling the weight of the galaxy pressing down on him. The Emperor's light seemed distant, yet unmistakable in his memory, a beacon of order in the chaos that still lingered. "We live," Marcus finally said, voice steady, "and we carry the message." The men nodded, understanding the gravity of their task. They were no longer just soldiers. They were emissaries of the Emperor's will, witnesses to the fire that cleansed Zoas 4 and the fallen cult that sought to twist reality itself. They gathered what remained from the ruins, artifacts, writings, relics of the crude cult, and prepared their vessels for departure. Every moment counted. The galaxy was vast, and the threat of disorder endless. As they boarded their ships, Marcus looked back one last time at the scorched land. The Collector was gone, its dark secrets buried beneath rubble and flame. Yet its memory lingered, a warning etched into the bones of the planet. "Let the stars see what the Emperor can do," Marcus said, voice low but resolute. "And let the weak remember why we fight." The ships lifted into the night sky, engines burning bright against the darkness. From orbit, Zoas 4 was a scarred jewel, silent and still, yet alive in memory. Marcus and his men charted their course across the galaxy, carrying with them both the truth of what had transpired and the imperative to spread it. Each world they visited, each colony they passed, became a testament to survival, courage, and faith in the Emperor. The story of the Collector, of Grenadel, of the 12th Regiment, grew with each retelling, inspiring hope and fear in equal measure. And Marcus knew, as he looked at the endless stars ahead, the galaxy was wide, the darkness deep, but as long as they stood, the Emperor's light would never fade. For now, they had won, and that was enough.